Then I went back to the internet, and it said, if you had metastases in your lungs, and in your spine, and in your skull, and in your pelvis, and in your hip, and in your femur, and growth throughout your abdomen, and a cancer in your kidney, well, you're stage 4 kidney cancer. And the results are grim. Your median survival time is 24 weeks, and the potential that you're going to survive that long is 5%. And this is what I could get off the internet, having had only a verbal information from an on-call oncologist. And so as the weeks passed, I begged for the medical record. Let's try to get to it. That binder is my husband's medical record. It would be great if it had been very easy to get to, but it was not. I begged for that for weeks. Finally, after speaking to a medical librarian, actually I did, my friend did. I was in the hospital taking care of my husband. She managed to talk to a Montgomery County Library person who's in charge of medicine, who told her the steps that I needed to do to get the medical record, and one of which was go down to medical records and request it and fill out all the paperwork. So that's what I did. Down to medical records. My husband upstairs on the 6th floor and said, I need a copy of my husband's entire medical record because we've got to figure out what we're going to do. It's 3 weeks after the day of diagnosis at this point. They said, oh, that'll be a 21-day wait, 73 cents per page. You'll have to agree to this upfront, signing these forms, and that you will have to agree for any duplication or error on our part and pay the entire part in full. You mean I could pay hundreds of dollars just to see my husband's medical record? Yeah. You know, we don't have jobs right now because I'm taking care of him every day in the hospital, and you're telling me that I have to pay you hundreds of dollars to see his medical record? Yeah, that's just the way it is. And the next day, the oncologist in charge of my husband's case came to me and my husband. It was a Saturday morning, it was 9:30. We had a list of questions, 5 questions. When were we going to get surgery? When were we going to get some kind of chemotherapy? I hear about this new thing called interleukin, maybe we could get that. And he said, we've decided we're going to send you home. We're going to send you home on a PCA pump. Well, I did my research and I knew what that meant. He was sending us home to hospice. He was sending us home to hospice without even telling us that's what he was doing. So what about surgery? And what about chemotherapy? Oh, we won't do that at this time. We'll send you home with a Dilaudid pump, and we'll get a nursing services together. And then he left the room. And my husband burst into tears because my husband was a good man. You know, he never complained, and he never yelled, and he never did anything wrong. He said, Reggie, don't complain in the hospital. If you're at McDonald's and you complain, they're going to spit your food. Think about what they're going to do in a hospital if you complain. This was it. They were sending us home to die. So my husband said, go after them. Do anything you can to get me care. And that point, I pulled out all the stops. Spent 5 days trying to get my husband transferred to another facility. Used the oncologist, case manager from the insurance company, used anybody that I knew, managed to get transferred done in 5 days. It was the hardest thing they'd ever seen, the hospital told me. When we got there, finally, the new facility, he was done with an out-of-date, incomplete MAR, which meant they could not provide services for him for the next 6 hours as they tried to cobble together a medical record using a fax machine and a phone line with a nurse. My husband was not allowed to be fed or given water by the facility. I could go get food from the private establishment downstairs and feed it to him myself. And that was all the care that could be provided in those 6 hours. His fentanyl patches, his lidocaine patches were unmarked. We had no idea what level of drugs that he was on. Everything was incomplete. If I had just been given his medical record on a day that I asked it 5 days before, my husband would not be having to suffer sufficient additional pain during this time. The next day, the doctors at this facility sent me back to the original one, saying, get the entire medical record, all films and all CDs. You have doctor support. I go back. I give them 45 minutes warning, but I'm coming. I get there. It takes them an hour and a half to print out the entire medical record and hand it to me. When I get back to the new facility and I hand it to the doctors, they say, let me look at that. And they look at it for about 45 minutes and then hand it back to me, saying, this is safest with you. Your husband might be treated at many facilities, but if you have a copy of the medical record, he will always have it with him. And so I had a copy of the medical record. I read it in 3 hours. And in 3 hours, I determined there were 13 major medical errors contained within the record that if I could have only seen it on a daily basis, his care would have been much, much better during the original hospital stay. And what what was I going to do with that information? Let's try to get to the right way. I created a new face sheet, because I'm an artist. And I thought, one of the major problems with the way that all this text-driven medicine was, is it's not visual. And the techs and the aides and the caregivers that come take care of your spouse, who have no idea that you have a massive metastases of the left femur, or that you have the pelvis completely impacted, or the fact that you're incontinent or on catheter, those things aren't necessarily known if somebody doesn't actually take a record. So I redesigned it in a visual format. And I could have stopped there, and I could have just talked to my husband, and we could have just stuck in our little world. But instead, I painted it on a wall at a delicatessen, 5 by 6 foot tall, on May 30th. And the day I put it up, members of the White House saw it. Because it's not just about my husband, it's not just about me, it's about all of us. This could happen to anyone. And if we don't have a visual way of explaining the way this is happening and how it impacts people, we're not going to change things.